Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch, myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and publishing. And today we are delighted to welcome a very special guest, Patty McGee, who is, she's an educator, an author and a consultant, and she is here to talk to us all about grammar. So I'm going to be quite nervous because, as a writer, I don't know, sometimes we play fast and loose with grammar. But Patty, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. And there's nothing to be afraid of with me in grammar.
Well, that's very reassuring. Well, we're delighted to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
Doing well, thanks, Roland, and thanks for joining us, Patty. So, yeah, you've, literally written the book on grammar. I'm going to be all worried about what I say. So yeah, I can consider you an expert from that perspective. You wrote "Not Your Granny's Grammar: An Innovative Approach to Meaningful and Engaging Grammar Instruction." So you're an educator. You teach grammar, right? To is it to kids or to adults? Who do you teach?
So it's both, really. I call myself a traveling teacher because I'm still teaching in classrooms as demonstration, and then kind of debriefing about that so that teachers can see these practices in action. So I am often, if not every day, in classrooms in some way, but as a part of adult learning around grammar and grammar instruction. And there's a reason it's called Not Your Granny's Grammar, because it is not what you're picturing, because both of you have said something about you have to be careful. And that my goal is to turn that feeling on its head for the next generation.
So what does that mean exactly? You don't think people need to worry about grammar? Is that what it is?
No, that's why I wrote a whole book on it. What I know is we do not have to use the same tired practices that were used when we were in school. They're still very much around today, and there really isn't proof of deep learning of grammar usage for most students. And so we grow up and we want to write, and I've talked to a lot of writing groups about how nervous they get before they send their writing to the copy editor because they feel like they don't know grammar well enough and they're sending off things with flaws. And I believe that grammar is to a writer as a painter, or as a paintbrush is to a painter. And how we choose to use or misuse standard grammar, it's kind of like Picasso, the way that Picasso was a fine artist before he went all Picasso on us. And so if we can learn standard grammar, and especially 4 types of sentences: simple, compound, complex, and the ever elusive compound complex, we have that as our base. We're more fluent with our writing, and we are also aware of when we're intentionally using style to not follow those rules or to not create those sentences.
Right.
Now,
and I think
Picasso say you've got to learn the rules so you can break them.
Yeah,
I think so.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's the thing is, a lot of authors choose to write in a style that isn't always grammatically correct, and they do that on purpose, and not just for one character specifically who speaks a certain way, is from Boston or whatever, but they might put that into their words, into just the regular narrative of their story, and then send it off to an editor and have it all changed, and that's a problem. So what are the reasons in your mind about why authors would do that? I mean, it depends. You could be writing for a type of audience that, that you think, and especially, I guess, young people these days, they have all their special grammar rules, everything short formed. I don't know what half the things my teenagers say. like if they were writing a book for their friends, it would probably be a lot different than if they were writing a book for me.
100%. And so I think of grammar in 3 categories or 3 buckets. The first bucket is community grammar. So that is grammar we use at home, grammar we use in conversations in communities. And that is ever evolving. As we know, we can hear new ways that are young people mostly are creating their own set of grammar, I guess rules, but more like grammar structures. And then there's book grammar. We'll talk about that in a second. And then there's standard grammar. And so standard grammar, when we know a certain style guide, whatever it might be, and what it is, and I usually write with Chicago style in mind, I know when it's aligning and I know when it's not. And that's where book grammar shows up. And so we're kind of code switching dependent upon who our audience is. So just as you were saying, Craig, it's if they're writing a story for their friends, it will sound completely different if they're writing a piece for their teachers, which sounds very different than writing for a standardized test. There's just so much that when we consider our reader/audience, then we can think of grammar as our art of clarity and connection.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I mean, I think, you have to make sure, we often say, find an editor, find a book cover designer or whatever that fits with you and understands you, because you might end up with somebody who is very rigid on what they think grammar should be. And it might be hard for them to, as an editor, work with something where you're specifically trying to not follow those guidelines. It's not just a matter of whether you use an Oxford comma or not, right? It's a whole different set of rules that you're following. So I guess it's important, though. I don't know. Actually, you tell me. Is it important to know the rules so that you can break them, kind of thing? Is that how it is? Like, you should probably understand what all the true book or standard grammar rules are before you go off and write a book that doesn't follow them, or does it matter?
I feel like we don't need to know all the rules. And yes, finding the right editor helps us make sure that our fingerprint, our voice is finding itself on the page. And also, there are certain grammar structures, not rules necessarily, but structures that can be effective. And again, that depends on the audience. So I just always think that sentences are the place to go. Like if we feel like we need a refresher, that having those 4 types of sentences and knowing that and how they're built, and then stylistically using or misusing however you'd like. There are some people who feel like it's not important to know those rules, and that's just fine. I want anyone to find their voice on the page. People who write have gone through a lot of, difficult grammar situations in their lives. And so I feel like most grownups are walking around with a little bit of grammar small t trauma.
And I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think it's also okay to admit when we don't, and to see if we polish up some of our skills, if it would be getting across our meaning with more clarity. I don't think that grammar instruction, grammar learning at any age looks like a worksheet that you complete and then there's immediate usage right after. Grammar is art. And if we said to let's say somebody who's creating a sculpture, that I just taught you how to use that chisel, so you should be able to use it without my help because you did it on a worksheet over there. It's absurd. And so we, as writers, thinking about just simply being curious about grammar. I mean, that was never asked. If anyone has a similar experience to me growing up, I mean, I just did worksheets on grammar in school, and then writing was done at home and then handed in, and then everything was corrected. It didn't teach me how to use grammar well. And that's really where this methodology starts, is with getting curious about, well, how do these sound? What type of rhythm does this bring into my writing? What type of music does it create across the pages? And really looking at grammar as an art form, not a set of stringent rules that we'll learn one day and never forget. It's living and breathing. And I believe that spoken grammar, those three buckets, spoken grammar and book grammar, change the standard grammar over time. I've actually,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I've done a little deep dive into history, and back in the 16th century, what you did was you capitalized all the important words in a sentence. And you can see, I know it's many centuries later, but the grammar that was used back then is not the grammar that we use today, because it's living and breathing and growing.
Right.
I don't know, Donald Trump, when he posts his truth things, does tend to capitalize things quite a lot. So maybe he's just using ancient grammar.
Yeah.
Oh,
maybe. Yeah. So listen, if I guess sometimes my worry is, if you write something that that you intentionally are making, imperfect, I sometimes worry that some readers would be like, this guy doesn't know his grammar. He's, you look at the way he writes, blah, 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 when you sort of did that intentionally because of the thing, like it sounds better. You just, whatever. So is there do you just have to ignore that, basically?
I think it's more than one thing. I think that it's like, okay, I'm going to not accept that I don't know grammar, but I'm also curious why, when I phrased this writing this way, why it didn't come off the way I intended. And is it really the reader that just needs to get used to that type of style? Or is it something that I can do still in my own voice, but create something with a little more clarity and connection? So right. I think it's completely up to the writer to decide that, but it's always nice to get some feedback where if a reader's not really understanding, or the point we were trying to make wasn't working, and it's not just one reader that's saying that, but you're hearing that from a few people, especially ones that we trust, that's when we might consider playing around and just messing around with words and different ways of saying it, and what feels most true to you as the author, and what's the trust you have in the clarity of it.
All right. Now, you've mentioned the 4 types of sentences a couple times, so let's look at those and make sure that everybody understands what they are.
Okay, sure. So a simple sentence is really a good one to know because it's a base sentence. It has a who and a what did they do. So basically, it has a verb or a verb of being, and then somebody, something doing that. And when we know that, if we decide to use a fragment, we've done so intentionally by not including both of those. And there's purposes behind that. And then the compound sentence is when you use a certain set of conjunctions or joining words. And there's an acronym for these words, which is fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Only those conjunctions can join two sentences together with a comma before the fanboys. I think that comma is going to go the way of the buffalo, but it's just nice to know that it's intentionally there to create pause between two independent clauses or two simple sentences. And then there's a whole other set of conjunctions that are called subordinating conjunctions that perhaps we are hearkening back to our Schoolhouse Rock days as I'm saying the word conjunction. And those, my co-author Tim and I like to call sentence destroyers, because when you put one of them in front of a simple sentence, it turns it into a dependent clause. And you can use them at the beginning of when you're joining two sentences together. Then there would be a comma when they join. If you use the sentence destroyer in the middle as the joining word, then that is, there's no comma there. So those are the basics, but I wouldn't teach it that way. Like, we would get our hands, quote unquote, dirty. Like, I like step-by-step charts on how to possibly do this, and then chances to play and even do something like that with our own writing. Just look across our sentences. How many, let's say, complex sentences have we included? And complex and sophisticated in this case means two different things. A complex sentence is using those sentence destroyers. And then there's the compound complex sentence, which is ever elusive to so many. But basically, it's at least one independent clause. It could be three independent clauses, but it's three clauses together. And what you know about simple, compound, and complex helps you with the punctuation. If it were up to me, we'd pause and I'd do like a whole visual for you, a chart that you can keep nearby and look back at and say, I think it's time for just a very long, sophisticated sentence. Let me try the compound complex, see what happens, and then revise it for your own style, for the impression that you want to make on your reader.
Right. Those are a lot of those lost me. I mean, I'm sure I use them all the time, but I'm not the kind of person that can name those things.
Yeah, and I can name them because I wrote a book on it. Yeah. I don't even care if writers can name them or identify them. I just think of them as another tool in the writing toolbox that we can draw upon if we want to. But there's no requirements in the world that says that you have to know them. But I have found that when I teach those to both grownups and kids, there's a greater comfort around grammar and a greater use of grammar like an artist.
Right. Are there any grammar rules that you can't or shouldn't break, in your opinion? Or are they all just up for grabs?
I think they're all up for grabs, but if they're all up for grabs at once and we're breaking all the rules all the time, it's not going to make sense. So we're going to need to think about which ones stick around so we're clear with what we're trying to say on the page, and which ones we're going to let go of. What was it? Cormac McCarthy? Like,
oh my God, I was just thinking when you said that, breaking all the rules at once, I was like, oh, Jack Kerouac, there we go. Or Cormac McCarthy, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he still has a way, though, once you get used to reading his voice, we understand.
I think it's kind of an interesting thing. I used to do a lot of editing, and I didn't like it because I wanted to get everything perfect. But a lot of authors have said, the thing with editing is what you want to do is just make sure that when somebody is reading your book, they don't get tripped out of something that just like takes them out of the moment. And they're like, oh, that's a bit weird. And then you want them just to stay immersed in the book. And I guess, is that the same with grammar, that, you might maybe play a bit fast and loose with grammar, but if it reads okay and it doesn't knock people out of enjoying the narrative, maybe that's absolutely fine.
100%. I couldn't have said it better myself.
You might have done this with better grammar.
I wonder I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on AI, because AI is, a lot of people are using it these days, not just to write, but to edit or to make their prose sound a little bit, better, than what they can do. Probably it leans more heavily towards being always grammatically correct, though. Although I guess, you could train it on your own style or whatever. But, you must, given what you're involved with here, you must have some feelings on that. So I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
Sure. I use AI all the time for feedback. So I start with, usually in a notebook, with ideas, organizing some things, like just trying to get what's in my mind out of my mind, and kind of other layers of things I wouldn't have found otherwise if I didn't start with just a notebook. And then I might use AI for, here are my ideas. Like, what are your thoughts based on what you know about me, or who I'm writing to, or what I'm writing about? It's just somebody, not a real person, but it's somebody that weighs in. And then we choose what to use or not to use. And I found it very helpful in doing more mundane things. Like, I needed to talk to my publisher about marketing. And instead of going and reading like 34 articles, they gave me 10 things that I could talk to my publisher about in terms of marketing for educational publishing. So that was lovely. And also, if we have a unique voice, we are then careful consumers of AI. AI, I worry, is just going to be something that people use to complete something, rather than a tool in that process. So we know it's not going away, and the misuse of it can happen and will happen. Yet, if we're true writers and we know our style and we know our audience and we know what we want it to sound like, at least at this juncture, we take whatever comes from AI. And just like with any human, I decide if I'd like to use that or not.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that one of the things people keep talking about AI and like, oh, writers are going to use AI instead of writing. I mean, one of the reasons we become writers is because we enjoy writing. And that's like it. It's people don't ride push bikes because they want to get there faster. They ride them because they enjoy riding push bikes. And it's the same with writing. It's like, I enjoy writing. I enjoy getting into the flow state and living the adventure. And I think that's, AI is fine if you want to send generic emails and you can't be bothered to write them yourself. But if you want to write a book, then you want to write. That's part of the reason you're there.
Yep.
Right. And I'm thinking more about the way that the world is sort of, the backlash that is going on. We see all these stories of authors getting, the pitchforks are coming out because somebody accuses them of using AI I just use it to edit, or I just, and the idea that there are these AI checkers, when really those checkers they're not good, but what they're doing is they're looking for specific rules, and I think those are probably likely grammar rules or things that are used very commonly by AI and maybe not as commonly by people, and so that's how they figure it all out, right? The whole thing about the EM dash, it's almost become like you can't use that, or people will say you're using AI, right? Because it overuses that. And so, we're almost getting to the point where it's almost like grammar is becoming like this rigid rule that is what is determining whether somebody's AI or not. Most people don't use grammar so consistently, let's say, as AI would.
Yeah. And I also think that what you're describing is a growing pain that we will grow out of eventually when we realize how AI can be an asset. I'm not saying AI for everything, for sure. We creatives thrive on being creative and having someone else take over for us. I say something take over for us, I think will eventually be part of what kind of goes away as we develop more and more knowledge and around AI and the way that AI is designed for people.
Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to, I guess, the way that grammar is evolving, do you see any sort of trends about things that are happening in grammar? And I mean, aside from the short forming, everything is sus and
yes.
all that stuff.
Yes. So I predict in like 20 years that some of the structures, some of the syntax that we're seeing in the way the younger generation communicates will find its way into the style guides. And each will be different. So I can't remember which one, but there's one that just says Oxford, comma, must have it. And then another says Oxford, comma, don't have to have it. But, that has been an evolution in our lifetimes. And what we're seeing as community grammar now in texting, in WhatsApping, and all the things, Snapchatting, that the younger generation is using, I anticipate a lot of that finding its way into mainstream grammar.
It's interesting because
so all
you
the
find
acronyms like IDK and stuff like that.
Right. Well, yeah, those get in there too. But that I'm actually thinking about sort of that in the sense that it seems that language changes a lot faster than grammar, right? We see, the Oxford comes out, or whoever it is comes out with a list of the words we're adding to our dictionary this year, and it's always like, short forms or weird things that I'm like, I don't even know what that is. It's something that's become popular. But grammar rules, it seems like they take way longer to really shift.
They do. And yet at the same time, just thinking historically, it's not as long. I mean, it's not as quick as vocabulary, like getting words into Oxford dictionary. But I did a little historical dive into when correction really became the main form of response to writing. And one of the pivotal points that happened was when we had a burgeoning middle class around the industrial age, and they could afford to go to colleges now that were only for the upper crust. And so Harvard was absolutely horrified by the middle class writing. And they said it was full of what they called linguistic barbarisms. And so that's where the current proofreading marks came from that origin. And even then, as they were trying to purge the middle class of their linguistic barbarisms, people would say, no, this is their voice. This is who they are. And if we read what was full of linguistic barbarisms then, it would sound like very formal English to us, almost difficult to read. And that's what, 125 years ago?
It's like Shakespeare, right? Like
yes.
We tried to read Shakespeare. I remember
yes.
when I was a kid. I'm like, I don't understand what he's saying.
Yep.
You know, and my kids now, I don't even think they teach it now. I mean, my kids aren't doing Shakespeare. They're doing, you know, books that I've never heard of that are, you know, written more recently. But the language is so different that it's almost hard to understand what is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just pulled up a list of you know, the words that were added to in 2025, and I don't know most of them. You know, they even added 6-7. Wow. So
they did. What is the definition, I wonder, since nobody seems to know?
A slang term or interjection often used as a nonsensical chant popular on social media. So yeah,
right then.
But yeah, we don't see that for grammar. We're not like, okay, you know,
not as
like,
fast,
yeah,
but still evolving.
So tell us more about, you know, sort of your mission with all this. Like, what is your goal? You've written a book and you teach, but like, what are you trying to do out in the world with grammar?
I am trying to flip the script on, number one, how we learn grammar, and two, the way we think about grammar. And that grammar is not something that we should wrap shame around. Like, we have these mugs that say grammar police, or t-shirts that say I'm silently correcting your grammar. I would like to do away with all of that, and instead really think about how grammar is something artful, and to characterize it that way instead of, oh no, you wrote a book on grammar, I'm really going to be uncomfortable with this conversation because you might be silently correcting my grammar. And I'd like to purge the world of that. And I believe, and this might be pie in the sky thinking, but it's a core belief of mine, that if we felt more comfortable with grammar, we would all write more. The bravest ones that still write as something that fills them up is, I just have so much admiration for. So current writers, but also there are many people that I believe took different roads in life because they didn't feel comfortable writing. And they wanted, let's say, a profession where no writing was involved because of the way grammar and writing were delivered in instruction. And so through grammar, and so through grammar as an asset, as something we learn, relearn, and continue to learn about, and continue to be curious about in our lives, I think it will open up doors and create people who are more fulfilled in their lives when they're not afraid to write.
Yeah, I find that, I guess it's grammar that if you hear somebody speaking with a different sort of form of grammar, often you'll make a judgment in your head about their intelligence, about their education, about their upbringing, you know, and it's not necessarily true, right?
No.
It's just a different experience. You know, they lived in a different area where that's the way everyone spoke. And it doesn't mean that they're not intelligent people. It just means that that is the way they learn. They still can produce the thoughts in their heads and, you know, be great thinkers about whatever, but they just talk a little differently. And I think that that's one of those things that we have to, as a people sort of get over. Is
Agreed.
Yeah.
100%. There is no superior grammar. There's just the grammar that connects with the audience that we are writing for.
Right. Do you have specific authors that you admire for their use of grammar?
Yeah. Margaret O'Farrell. Is that who wrote Hamnet?
Oh, Hamnet. Okay.
Yes.
Fun, but I heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I had to pause so often because the way she wrote was so breathtaking. I had to just pause and reread and let my heart soak in the wording. So that's one of my favorites. I don't know, I read a whole lot, but she's a standout for me.
And they recently just made the movie of her book, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes, and it's a great movie, and the cinematography is its own type of grammar, yet the wording in the book isn't as elevated in the movie. So I missed.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I'm sure that they wanted to sort of make it a little bit more accessible to a wider audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But her grammar is very simple, but also about times that are so long ago that she has to intentionally leave out like a metaphor that we could use today. And she had to use the language that was not in the grammatical form because, you know, Hamnet, she was married to Shakespeare in that book. And that's who the book is, the point of view it's told from. But the grammar is simple to understand, but so beautifully crafted. But yes, I believe that the movie does make it more accessible for those who might not be like me or like the books that I like. And instead, those who are like cinematic kinds of people who find so much joy in that, which I did love the movie. I'm saying I loved it and it was brilliant. But I can see also the value of it cinematically and the acting.
Now, when you finished reading that book, did you find yourself speaking with a different cadence just because you were used to the way the words were in that book?
No, I wish I could have. It felt so far away from my own ability to craft. And it just had me in admiration.
I didn't even realize that it was a book. I knew it was a movie. And I didn't realize that it was a book as well. And I didn't even really know the story about it. But did she write it then in sort of the way that Shakespearean plays were written, that kind of a language?
No,
okay.
Very accessible to today's reader. There's like a simplicity to her style and a word choice and combination of words that just, like I said, like made me hold my heart and wish I could write like that. But I give you guys a little homework assignment. How about just going on Goodreads and asking for a few quotes from Hamnet? And you'll have a chance to admire.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a look at that because I haven't read that kind of a book in a while. I usually stick to science fiction and fantasy, but it would be interesting to read something like that just to get sort of an idea of what people are doing with the language these days.
And just admire different authors just through a couple of quotes. It's like, I don't know, hard to explain. It's like a gift to be able to experience it.
Right.
I think that's one of the things about art is when you experience, I mean, I just watched the movie Sinners, for example, and I saw that and it inspired me because I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've seen. It inspired me to want to make art because I wanted to be like that. And the same thing with reading books. I just read a noir book by Raymond Benson, and I read it. I'm like, damn, he's such a good writer. I want to write because I want to write something that gives other people as much pleasure as I got from reading this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, he broke a lot of rules in the grammar. He loved putting exclamation marks in, you know, I would use exclamation marks in dialogue, but that's it. But he as an author would put them everywhere. And I loved, and that was very unusual, but I loved it. And it made it quite a unique reading experience. So I see what you mean. When people bend the rules, it can really make a lasting positive impression.
So he writes like I write emails.
Yes, as you know, I was just talking to my son about how you have like different voices when you send emails and stuff, and it's very corporate America. It's like, "Hi there!" exclamation mark, and then you know you put the exclamation mark just so people realize that you're happy and upbeat. You know, you're asking these things nicely.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and then we could get into emojis with like, you know, you don't want to upset somebody, so you put LOL or you put smiley face. Or something.
Yes, I read someplace that Abraham Lincoln was the first to start using emojis, like a colon and a parentheses.
That's funny.
Like he would do that.
I'm not saying it's correct, but I read it someplace.
I mean, they didn't.
Craig is very skeptical because he's Canadian.
I'm just trying to visualize. Like, did they even have typewriters back then?
I think with his handwriting.
Yeah, but then it's not. It's just a happy face.
But who?
I guess it's a sideways happy face, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a sideways. You know, it's like I'm not.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep believing it because I like it.
It could be true. I don't know. Sounds like one of those retrofitting history sort of things, but I am skeptical by nature. It's true.
Well, unfortunately, we're approaching the top of the hour. So before we wrap things up, it would be lovely if you could tell everybody who's watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify where they can find out more about you and more about Not Your Granny's Grammar and everything like that.
For sure. So my website is the best place to go. It's pattymcgee.org. It is spelled Patty with a Y. I actually have a picture book of the Patty with an I that if you Google this person, you will get a famous skateboarder from the 60s. She was really talented, but that's not me. I don't have that kind of balance. But it's pattymcgee.org is where you can find lots of things about me.
Well, that is wonderful. We will make sure to pop a link to your website down in the description. So if you have been watching or listening and enjoyed everything that Patty has had to share with us, make sure you scroll down there and click on the link and go and check out her website. And as you scroll down there, you will also pass that big empty comment box. So make sure you leave Patty a comment and let her know how much you appreciated everything she shared with us today or your thoughts on grammar, because we're always interested in reading the comments that we get. And while you're down there, there is, of course, that subscribe button if you haven't already. There is that like button that you need to smash, as the kids say. And then there is also that bell icon. If you click on that, you will get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked. And, of course, there will be a brand new episode of Fully Booked coming out next week. So until then, cheerio.